Welcome. Mike, you've been around for a while. How have you worked with distributors in growing your business?
I'd probably like to start off by saying that Caroline's presentation is probably going to be one of the most important presentations of this whole conference. Distribution is one of the biggest things and the most important things in terms of tourism product success. These are the guys that supply us with customers. And even though you may hear, there's a whole lot of different feedback that you may hear about the distribution sector of the industry, but it's the bread and butter. You cannot do it. It's bankable stuff. I mean, these guys are booking out sometimes 2 to 3 years ahead. So, I think so. From that perspective, they're an important player, and I think as the questions roll out, we'll kind of.
So when you made that conscious decision to go out there and start working with these guys, what activities did you undertake? How did you meet them? How did you approach them?
Well, the first thing was visitations. That was the biggest one, as Caroline alluded to. Going to their office, presenting your product. What they want is guaranteed quality, good high standard delivery of your experience as well. Because these are the guys that are caught out in the middle. So if you present a bad product, it usually comes back to you from them, but they're the ones that are going to get direct from the customer. So then their neck and reputation is on the chopping block as well. So visitations was a real big one for us. Constantly assuring and guaranteeing that there's continuity of product. Yes, we are going to run 7 days of the week or 7 nights of the week. Yes, whenever you put people onto us, we will promise to deliver exactly what we had said that we were going to deliver. The other one was ATE, setting up booths, taking the time out to actually pay the kind of money that you need to get along to ATE. We call it trends back in New Zealand, but they're really important because that way you're setting up your own little booth, you're displaying your product, and you have the distribution coming through, wholesalers and inbound tour operators, and that's where you engage in negotiations in terms of them buying your product into their packages. So there's a lot of other ways as well. Keeping in constant contact. All the points she made were so on the money, and it's endless work. It's tiresome work, but you can imagine from their perspective as well. They're kind of out front working really hard to survive. And for them to survive, they've got to have you on board with them.
What about for mills? Travel agents are obviously keen to get out and check out product, check out the quality experience, so that they can assess it for the customers they're working in the various markets. How have you guys approached that over the years?
Absolutely, yeah. I was talking to a couple of guys earlier on, and they said, the travel agents, we charge them to come out as well. Far out, man. We were just so not on. We don't do that. For mills is such an important aspect of the promotion of your product. These guys have got to come and have a look to see, to make sure that the product is deliverable, to make sure it is up to the standard that you promised that it would be. Going up and visiting them at their office is the start of it. The biggest part is getting them to come down and actually have a look at the product, go through it, experience it. And then from there on, and it doesn't stop there, the mills will continue to come because they are trying their hardest to sell on to retail agents, and so you'll get a flood of them coming through as well. And usually you pick up the attitude from the operators, another bloody free one, But I tell you what, you've got to consistently have that going. As I say, we put through 150,000 people last sort of 12 months. And I'd say probably about 70% of that is through distribution. So the mills are right at the top of the line. If I could pay to get wholesalers, every single wholesaler and their frontline staff over to visit our product, I would do that. If I could pay that, it's big money, but because the turnover on the retail side of the frontline people who actually sell your product is quite high. So you're constantly got to be updating in terms of not only them selling your product, so they've got a clear understanding of it, but also you updating them in terms of new developments and pricing and such.
Great. Okay, thanks for that. Caroline, you've been working with Indigenous operators for many years. What are the typical issues and challenges that you've come up against in dealing with product?
I think one of the ones is that contactability issue, and it's and even though I understand it from the Indigenous operators' side, I've been very privileged to travel far and wide in this beautiful country of ours and experience areas that a lot of tourists are yet to see, and I can't wait for the day that they can. And I can understand the issues around contactability, but so that's one of our biggest challenges, is actually getting a response back from the operators sometimes. The other one is service delivery. We can have them, go for weeks on end without any negative comments, and all of a sudden, boom, something's happened. And the tourists don't necessarily understand that there's been an issue at home or within the community or something on that side of the family, and the level of service slips slightly. And it doesn't take long for a bit of negative feedback. And one of the things that we've found, because I work as a general sales agent with a product, is that a lot of the, because of that distribution matrix I showed you, the wholesalers in Europe particularly have their own retail travel agency arms, and they're connected across countries. So they work in the Belgian market, the Dutch market, the German market, the Swiss market. And even though they're competing in a sense as retail agents and wholesalers, they actually all still talk. And because it comes back, drills down to the one inbound tour operator that looks after them in Sydney, if there is a problem, it's going to come back and bite you really quickly. So, and yes, we do get the phone calls from the disgruntled client. We get the phone call from the inbound tour operator. This is where I'm wearing the general sales agent hat. Caroline, we've got another complaint, and you just put your head in your hands and think, okay, now we've got to deal with this again and again. So it really is about, slipping customer service standards can be another issue. So it's about, as Mike said, you've got to maintain that level of service, that delivery, that reliability. If you're going to be there 7 days a week, you've got to be there 7 days a week. If you're only a part-time business, make it very clear you only operate a few days a week. That can then become quite tricky for people to sell. So there's things about that, just contactability and keeping customer service levels at their best.
I mean, if you're not delivering a product, you'll get found out pretty quickly. And these days with social media channels and the likes of TripAdvisor, it's so easy to get your story out there as a consumer about the bad experience you had, and that can multiply, as we all know.
Absolutely, but TripAdvisor can also work in your favour. So if you work it right, it's a great marketing tool for you. But if you're not aware of what's going on TripAdvisor, it can also undo your business very quickly. And people sitting in here could be tweeting, they could be on Facebook, blogging, doing whatever as we speak. So it's a very instant world we live in. So the negative gets out as quick as the positive.
Mike, in terms of the online channels, what's your experience there? What are you doing as a business to engage with the online environment?
You do. Probably just about it. There's a common track that most of the operators, sort of do. Your website has got to be the most important one. What I find too with a lot of Indigenous businesses is when they brand and name their websites, it's kind of like names that us foreigners, can't find, who can't pronounce. So if we can't pronounce it, we don't look for it. So it has to be something really, really simple. It's like with us in New Zealand, it's just like, Tamaki Maori Village or Maori Village on our brochure. It's just living Maori village, rather than Ti Horotanga o Ngā Ringo Ringo Kahumata Moi Moi Maori Village. Ain't nobody going to look for that, it just gets too hard. So the simplicity on the site is a really, really big one. Quickness of the site in terms of turning over information. Also the site has to be navigational, and exciting. We're also on Facebook. I'm sort of on Facebook personally as well, but it's a little bit of a political animal. But our company's on Facebook, and we get a lot of feedback from that, not only from clients who've been out to the product, but others asking questions to come to it. So it's a point of contact there as well, Foursquare, Twitter, all the different ones as well. So there's all kinds of different ways how that's really dispersed. One of the other things we're looking at, we've gone into is the technology is also the development of a travel buddy, which is it's a fully integrated online application, so a mobile application. So basically, when you get to a country, you download our app, and what it does is it's basically sort of tracks down about anywhere between 8 to 16 satellites, pinpoints exactly where you are, and it gives you an audible commentary of about 1.5 kilometres or whatever you point your phone at, and then it gives you directions in terms of how to get there. We zoned New Zealand out into 7 different zones, sort of did that through Vodafone, and So, and that related to the 7 different canoes and the 7 different tribes throughout New Zealand. So when people have their mobile phone going on, travelling through New Zealand, they're getting the story of different tribes in the background, and as they cross over the zone, it just automatically goes into the next tribe and their story. We did that with our experience down in Christchurch too, over the 12.5 acres of land. We zoned it out into 7 chapters so people can actually download the storytelling concept so they can see it physically, download it on their phone, and as they cross over the different zones or the chapters within the experience, it gives it in their own language. So they see the storyteller talking, they see the action going on. So it's also got it's also quite interactive. It's voice to voice in terms of language translation, text to voice, voice to text, so you can actually have it on speakerphone. Hold it up to somebody who doesn't speak English, or doesn't speak English too well, like hold it up to an Aussie who doesn't speak English at all. And it actually interprets to us, people who speak English very, very well, exactly what you're saying. And you can actually do it back through the voice messaging as well. So there's all kinds of tricks that are going on in terms of...
Okay, great. Let's have a little chat about packaging. We all know you might have a great product, you might be a wonderful accommodation operator, you might have a great tour, you might be remote location. Caroline, from a distributor viewpoint, how do you talk to these guys about packaging and working with product, maybe not only within their region, but across regions or cross states?
It's a good one, and Marianne Jarks from Adventure North, the Barmer Ways here, and she's done exactly that. She's working with a group of product in the North Queensland area based, and so her tours, her business was a day tours to Cooktown and alternative, doing some touring around there, and now she's working with the Indigenous people and created a 3-day tour, the Barmer Way. It includes 3 Indigenous products that are a part of each day, and it's a fantastic package. It's easy to sell. Everything's there, so the accommodation, the hotel pickups, the meals, it's all included. So that sort of stuff is really easy then, because a lot of the trade may not know about the wonderful Walker Sisters at Bloomfield Falls. So that's their way of getting people onto their tours, because they're a small ticket item tour. They're on a road that when it rains you can hardly get to them, but during the dry season, absolutely is when they want to be out there guiding people through their beautiful country. So becoming part of that package has now brought them into the distribution system in a way that they couldn't manage on their own because of that contactability issue. So that's, and there's a few other really good examples around Australia where that has happened.
I think the one up in North Queensland, the Kuranda All-Inclusive Day Tour, you've got some great products in their own right that are strong. Sky Rail, Japakai, the Indigenous Centre, Down Under Tours, all great products in their own right, but the fact that they package and work together, they're leveraging off each other's marketing strengths, and they're so well known up there now. All right, we might go to the floor and see if there's any questions out there. So there's some mics. We've got a question there. Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. Marianne from Adventure North in the Bummer Way. With that contactability, Caroline, do you have any solutions for, say, some of the small operators that are in the remote regions, like maybe having a message on their mobile phone saying, sorry, out on tour, but I think maybe they just need maybe some solutions that you might have.
Absolutely, and it can be as simple as having an answer machine so that at least we can leave a message, or we do know where you are and when you'll be back from your tour. But ideally, if there's someone within the community or a family member that can be responsible for checking your messages while you're away, they don't necessarily have to answer the phone. They may have their own job and can't be interrupted during the day. But at least at the end of the day, if they can come by and check your answer machine or check your emails. There's a lot of operators that still don't, in remote areas, that still have unreliable email access. But it's about finding someone that can do that for you, or at least having an answer machine. It's amazing how many people we can't even leave a message to let them know that we're trying to contact them about a tour. And the more information you can provide back to us when we're trying to contact you, so that we do know, and then can send that message on to the agencies overseas. If we're letting them know, like the operator's on tour and they'll be back on Saturday, we'll be able to respond then that sometimes is good enough. But when we can't even leave a message to let you know that's really frustrating. The other thing is, in the Northern Territory they have the small tourism hubs, so that we're working to address that issue in Alice Springs, and here we've got the bush traders which are out there. They can take messages and operate and manage the diaries of some of the smaller operators, or even the bigger operators when they're out on tour. So there are ways, but it is just It's probably not a great answer, but there's not the perfect solution that I'm aware of.
Got another question there. Thank you.
Hi Caroline, Marcus from Tourism WA. I think this is a great session to have. I suppose my question is born out of personal experience of when I first joined the tourism industry with my operator hat on. And I was head of marketing at a small operation in the UK, and very small marketing team, very busy. I suppose our primary focus was the domestic market, but some of the language used in terms of the distribution system, once you get to retail agents and wholesaler, my first year in that operation, that would have been a whole different language to me, and one that I would have found very, very scary. And you've talked about how busy wholesalers and inbound tour operators are, and how busy us operators are. Have you got any tips in terms of how that link can be facilitated or made more, just visible, I suppose? Because for many, I would think it would be quite a hard step in that learning process. And your visit, as an ITO now, this is great. You're visible to operators, but how can we replicate that out in the real world and make it easier for everybody?
That's a very good question. Within Australia, we're very fortunate. We've got our state and territory tourism organisations, and generally within those organisations, there is a team that's dedicated to the international trade relationships. So it's important to find out who these people are. One of the first things you do when you're going into the tourism industry, and I know this is Australian-centric, but is to go to your state or territory tourism organisation, I'm sure in New Zealand as well, and talk to the international trade people within that organisation, because they're the ones that know the inbound tour operators, because that's their job, is to get them to South Australia, or that's where I'm from, get those guys, the inbound operators from Sydney and Melbourne, over to South Australia whenever they can, to take them on for meals and introduce them to the product. So it's a two-way relationship, so you go and introduce yourself to the state tourism organisation, get them out onto your product tour, because that's their job, is to learn about new product and build the relationships between the trade and the product within their state. So if you can get, and they should welcome you in. They should welcome you in, because each state and territory is trying to find new product, differentiate themselves from other states. Even though we market as Brand Australia, when people really drill down and look for something different, they might be driven by a particular experience in a particular area. So those relationships with the organisations that are funded to build those relationships between the trade and the product are really important.
Okay, further questions?
Yes.
Hi, Carolyn. I was just wondering, can you just give us a bit of information about, non-Aboriginal tourism operators that are out there, and how Indigenous tourism operators are suffering from, that branding of labelling their tour Aboriginal?
Okay, this is quite a hot topic around Australia, and particularly with some operators in my state. It's come up at meetings that I attend, and I'm not sure it's how we manage. And Jing Jing referred to it yesterday in her experience and for her year of research about people interpreting culture that isn't theirs. And there are issues out there, and I think Kakadu and Uluru-Kata-Tjuta National Parks have tried to address some of this by having their park, their guide training that people must do before they can guide in the park. But it is about educating the market out there that Indigenous stories should only really be told by the Indigenous people from that area. And Tourism Australia are doing a really good job with their Indigenous Tourism Champions program and working with the trade and educating the trade. So, it's some people are driven by cost, and unfortunately a lot of experiences with Indigenous tour operators in Australia are a high price point because of their remoteness and their accessibility. So even though when we're working with operators and looking at their competitors and the different prices out there, sometimes you just can't compete on price. So then, so customers that aren't driven by price and are driven by wanting that really authentic experience are prepared to pay a bit more. But there is an issue, and there's a lot of traditional owner groups that are starting to stand up and say, we do not want non-Indigenous operators interpreting our country and our sites. They need to engage with us and work with us. So I think that's going to be an ongoing discussion. And yet, yes, operators are, Indigenous operators coming into the market or have been in the market for a while, are continually frustrated when they come across non-Indigenous people interpreting their country and their sites. So I think it's got to be an approach. And South Australia is actually trying to deal with this issue at the moment because it has been raised by a traditional owner group in quite a key destination within South Australia, and it's becoming a whole of government response to their concerns and issues, and sort of interesting to see where that goes. But it is a problem that's out there.
Okay, Carolyn, we talked, just before we go to the next question, a little bit about the shift from west to east. What do operators need to do to engage in those new channels? They may not be familiar with the markets, the cultural nuances of doing business in the Eastern Hemisphere. From an ITO viewpoint, what would you recommend?
Well, the first thing is what's happening around Australia a lot is that there's a lot of China-ready workshops being run. So I'd get yourself to one of those very quickly. They're being run through state tourism organisations and tourism industry councils, and ATEC have been running workshops as well. You've got to get out and understand the Eastern market. It's very, very different than the Western market. They have very different expectations. They have different ways of travelling. They have, the different understandings of food and how their days operate, the busyness of the days, the pacing of the days. So there's a lot to learn about these different markets. And I think you can't ignore the rise in the Eastern markets travelling, but if it's really not suitable for your product, once you've done the research, then you're probably best not trying to go into that market. The traditional markets are still there. They won't disappear. They're having a bit of a struggle. Their economies are struggling, but we're still getting good numbers, solid and consistent numbers. But it is about educating yourself, make use of the workshops, because every state is running a China-ready workshop, because every state is wanting Chinese business to come to them, and the other Eastern countries as well. There's Korea and Indonesia and India. So it's about really educating yourself. And there are certain distribution partners that specialise in those markets. So use their knowledge, because they're the ones that will say, get them out on your tour, say, what can we do, what can we modify on our tour. I've done some work with the Tribal Warrior Association in Sydney. They run cruises on Sydney Harbour. We ran a one-day Chinese cross-cultural awareness workshop with the Tribal Warrior crew. We then went to a recording studio in Redfern and recorded their commentary that they have on the boat in Mandarin. And we had a lot of laughs, because we said, whoever's pressing play on the recording needs to know when they've moved from the Opera House to Mrs Macquarie's chair to the Sydney Harbour Bridge, so that the right commentary is rolling out at the right time. But that was a solution that the Indigenous people of the Tribal Warrior Association and the Chinese guy that was doing the recording, they had to sit down and work that out. And so, there's things that you can do to prepare yourself if you're in a gateway destination or a destination where these customers are coming.
Thank you for that. Next question, Wes?
Just on that last question, I think that's a really important issue, and if we're going to, at the end of this conference, there is going to be some sort of a Darwin statement, then I think that's an issue that needs to be carefully discussed, and find we should come with some resolve about how we deal with that. My question is, I guess the elephant in the room is that we're in the biggest tourism slump that we've ever known, possibly. So, as a distributor or an ITO, what specific advice are you giving Indigenous operators about how we get through the next 4 or 5 years?
Wow, I think I'd be in government if I could answer that question. One is explore new markets, I guess. Go out there, see where the tourists are coming from, and are you suitable for their market. And just keep refining your product, and stick with it, as best you can. People are still touring, still keep those relationships, look at building new ones, keep training your guides. And you're in a position where you're going to have your, fantastic accommodation coming online, hopefully next season. So, there needs to be a lot of work now, and I know that Nipmuc have been doing a lot of work on getting that message out there. So you can't ignore your sales trips, you can't ignore any of that. And you just got to, and yes, operators will disappear, unfortunately, because of this, but that's not restricted to the Indigenous sector. There's a lot of small operators that run the tourism industry in this country and in a lot of countries, and a lot of them are suffering and struggling as well. So it's just trying to minimise your costs, maximise your effort, and hang in there as best you can.
So just on that a little bit further. Sorry, my name's Wes Miller from Nipmuc Tours in Catherine, NT. in this sort of time, and you just said about minimising costs, is this the time to be spending more on marketing or less?
Now that's
It's an interesting,
right.
interesting point. That
That's a very interesting question, and there are ways of doing marketing that aren't hugely expensive. I mean, the online world allows that, and if you've been smart and you've got databases of your agents and wholesalers, you can communicate through newsletters, online forums, webinars. There's lots of ways of doing your marketing and your sales training without having to get on an aeroplane halfway around the world and pay a fortune for rooms and accommodation and transport. So there are ways of, still trying to do good marketing without it costing you a fortune. But I think the important thing in the industry with the trade is if you disappear out of their view for a while, then they think, oh, is that mob still around? So you can't, not keep in touch with people, but you've got to find the most cost-effective way of doing it.
Interestingly, after the GFC, talking to some of our members around the country, they upped their activities as their competitors went hid under the blanket, and they stole market share, and they've maintained that going forward. So, different operators have different views. Mike, any comments on that one?
It's a big question, and the thing is it's both. You've got to look inwardly in terms of cutting back the fat. Because obviously, as you roll along with your company, you tend to, when things are going well, you tend to do unnecessary spend. And so, usually, what happens with tour companies, the first thing you do, is you start finding ways in terms of how you can streamline your product. The second thing is that you do spend a little more into marketing, but maybe into different sectors, like what Caroline was saying. You've got to remember there's also, like, in the market segments that we're working in as a company. This is our little company sort of brief I've got here. I've got a few of them I brought with me, but on one side I've got market segments. So there's top line market focus. These are the different market segments you could be attacking. Top line market focus. There's MIC or MICE, which is meetings, incentives, conferences, and events. Education market is also another big one, although it's not a very big payer for us. The FIT market, local awareness campaigns, accommodation sales plans is the group series, IBO wholesale, the backpacker market, cruise ship market. There's just such a lot of different market segments that are out there. So with our company, we did both. We did cutback, and then we looked for new market. We also went on what we call a guerrilla marketing warfare, which is actually stealing market from competitors. Because within Rotorua product, for instance, there's 14 other products that are doing the same as what we're doing. And so you go into, guerrilla marketing in terms of doing just that. The unfortunate thing about like a global recession like this is that it causes a lot of the operators to go into price competitiveness or price wars. And that's the worst thing that can happen to an industry. Reason why? Less is invested back into product. And it's a natural transition. I think if you can hold in there and hang in there, I don't think it's as long as what you say it's going to be honest with you. I think the dynamics of the industry on a global basis has really changed, but when you look at the international figures, they're still up 3% on previous year's figures in terms of people travelling. What we've got to figure out is where they're going and why.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
Hi, Mike. I'm interested in this travel buddy concept and the application that free and independent tourists can use and find more about the local area that they're passing through. Is it something that we should be worried about, in that people can no longer rely upon a physical person to guide them through these places, or is it something we should embrace with the rise of smartphones and online technologies?
Oh, I remember the days before the mobile phone came in. Who would have ever thought that we'd be standing somewhere in the wilderness talking to somebody 1,000 miles away? And it was hard to embrace then. I kind of trying to figure out, did we all used to, when you see everybody out in the foyer there on mobile phones, in between breaks and that. And now, like Caroline was saying, we were probably texting, down Facebook as we're talking. But what did we do before that? We were all running to the phone booths. I don't know, so technology will always drive the charge. I keep a close eye on statistics in terms of numbers of people who use mobile phones. When you look at the use of smartphone and smartphones and the purchase of them in these major markets of ours, mate, they're increasing at a phenomenal rate. And as the database pricing of it comes down, particularly down here in Australasia, more and more people will actually turn to using those smartphones. Absolutely. Have we got anything to worry about distribution? Caroline, I'm sure I never ran inbound operators down 4 years ago. I don't think we... Oh, no. That's my brother. We look alike. All Maoris look alike.
So I suppose what I'm really interested in is, from a traditional guiding perspective and, taking people around, telling them stories and passing culture on.
Yep.
Yes, it's possible through smartphones, but it's then taking that revenue stream away.
Yep.
So it's changing the market face completely.
I mean, it enhances it. One of the things we're looking at is like, how do we get the message across to people who speak in different languages? Like somebody asked the question, how do you adjust your product to a different market, like for instance the Japanese market or the China market? Well, instead of being so predominantly one way in terms of how we deliver our experience, we twigged it, changed it. What do Japanese like? They're right into kung fu, karate and all that kind of stuff. So we did more weaponry handling and warfare manoeuvres in our delivery of our experience, and they just went off, loved it, went like hotcake. In the sense that we're talking about technology coming in as far as the travel buddy is concerned, with our experience in Christchurch, it's really different because it's quite verbal. So you get a storyteller who comes out through the gates of time. She opens up a big book, and basically once, the year is now 1800s. Civil war has broken out all over the country, and all the sound effects come in, and as she turns the pages of the books, the characters come through the gates, so the people are actually meeting the descendants of the very character whose story we're following. Now, if you can't understand the language, you won't catch the story. You'll see the entertainment side of it, but catching the story is the most important part, and that's where technology really, really does help. And in terms of interpretation of land, we zoned New Zealand out in 7 different sections right throughout. Imagine people, they sit these things on their car and it plugs into their existing car speakers, and they're getting a full-on commentary, in the surrounds of their own car with their own family. With it also, we're able to really, track. So as they're sort of coming down through the country and going through the different zones, we can see, once they turn on, and download our application, we can see where Travel Buddy 3457 is. And we send them, personal message. Hey, how you doing? How's the kids? Is everything okay? I saw you went to the ice cream shop and bought, hokey pokey ice cream, man. How'd it go? So it's kind of like, it can be Big Brother scenario on one side. On the other side, it's kind of like, hey, somebody's watching over us. Maybe, I don't know.
Okay, we might need to leave it there. I think some of the important messages that have come out of the session, though, is if you want to grow your business, you can't avoid working with distributors. They play a very valuable role in assisting you grow your business. Importantly, from new markets, and we've talked about the shift from west to east, I think you do need to have a diverse portfolio of markets that you're active in, and very much a multi-channel approach. You need to engage with online operators, traditional inbound tour operators and the like in order to grow your business. So if you can all join me in thank you, Mike and Caroline, for sharing your experiences this morning, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.